Had some people that wanted to be able to attend this event, but unfortunately were not able to make it. And so they asked if I'd come out and cover it. And I'm doing this twofold. I'm doing it for the Minnesota Black Robe Regiment channel, and I'm also doing it as the Upper Midwest field correspondent for Right America Media. So, yes, this event is being put on by my former employer, and yes, Sheriff Ferguson is here. Uh, so far, we're doing fine. Half expected them to see me and tell me I wasn't allowed to be here, but we'll see how it goes. They haven't even said anything about me reporting yet, so we'll see. Probably too public of an event or venue for them to make too much of a stink, but we'll see how it goes. I've been told, if you read the thumbnail that I have up, that this is not a child-friendly event because they're going to be talking about some things like, I guess, apparently online grooming and predation and things like that. But it should be an interesting evening to see what people have to say, and it should give us put our finger on the pulse of the direction that um, the Olmsted County law enforcement community is headed with, should we say, their focus going forward in 2023. One thing that is definitely something we should be looking into and asking sheriffs here in Minnesota about is their stand on the legislation that's passing through the Minnesota House and the Minnesota Senate to uh, uh, restrict constitutional liberty of firearms ownership. The Minnesota Sheriff's Association has come out in support of the legislation, not against it, but for it, while some of the sheriffs in Minnesota have been coming out and speaking against the legislation. So it's very interesting to see a little bit of that internal struggle that's happening there. It'd be nice to see the sheriffs in southeast Minnesota, Torgerson, DeGeorge, the sheriff of Mauer County, the sheriff of Freeborn County, the sheriff, well, Freeborn's not really southeast, but in this region, Sheriff Houston County, Winona County, it'd be really nice to see them come out and talk about that. I'm pretty sure that topic will not come up tonight. If it does, it'll be very interesting to see what the take is. Um, the position of sheriff is such that we often talk about, is your sheriff a constitutional sheriff? Is they're the highest um, legal authority, law enforcement official in your area, and that's true to some degree. Um, the problem is that sheriffs are just as restricted by politics as chiefs of police are, and if you happen to be spineless and in a very left-wing area like, well, let's say Olmsted County with Rochester, you're not going to do anything to rock the boat because your county commission will wrap your funding up and keep it from you. So while the sheriff is elected and can't be fired by the county commission, county commissioners, the county board can do what they want to make the life of the sheriff or the job of the sheriff as difficult as possible. And it takes a real spine to stand up to that. And in the case of many sheriffs in this area that I'm aware of, they just don't have that kind of spine. So we're going to get started here, and let's see what they have to say tonight.
I mean, you can put it up here too, but I think if you really need to see yourself.
While you're at it, like this, share, and pass it around because it is important information. And with the First Amendment being what it is, people have a right to see this.
All right, let's get started. Welcome. We're excited to be here. I'm Kevin Torres from the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, and we've got a group of panelists up here from our office and community and the county that we hope will bring to you information that will help. It could be a little startling at times, a little disturbing, but we're not trying to make it that way. We don't want people to be paranoid. We don't want people to be in fear of what's out there. We want you to be educated. That's what this is all about. Community awareness, for anybody, especially when it comes to kids. That's why we do this. We talked about this at the DARE graduation a few weeks ago here, hoping that we would have a lot of folks here. We are streaming it so that the parents in the Stewartville School District have an opportunity to view it if they're home with their kids and, wrangling them in the way that they probably need to do. We're good with that. So hopefully they're catching some of those folks there too. And those of you that are here, if you have people, I want to say this now so I don't forget it later if I do, but please, the paperwork, the handouts that are up there on the table as you leave, please take more. If you think you have some friends or others that should be here, others in your friend group, parent friend group or whatever, please take it with you. And the one thing I should mention, on one of the new updates, since we did this before, last time we did this here in Stewartville was before COVID, but down in the lower left-hand corner of this handout, which is tonight's agenda, there is a QR code, and the QR code takes you right to the PowerPoint. And you'll have access to that, so you can use that today or tomorrow and whatever, and do what you wish with it at that point to help remind yourself of what you heard here tonight and you will hear tonight. There is one change in the program that's a little bit, it's not a change in content, it's just who the speakers are. So if you have that agenda in front of you, Detective Dan Johnson and Deputy Jason Horn are switched. Jason's going to go first, and then Deputy Dan Johnson will follow that. So there's a lot out there right now for parents and kids, and the topics that we're going to talk about tonight really are, as I said, it's a really, more than anything, it's a parenting 101 type of session. It's an idea that we've been kicking around and had been kicking around, something that way back in my DARE days, I was a DARE instructor for 12 years, and we used to have a thing called family night, or parent night actually, and we basically did this very similar presentation. We didn't have all of the types of presenters we have here tonight, but basically we did cover a lot of it, and the DARE officer basically did the whole show in that sense. And as DARE evolved and has evolved to continue to grow with what our communities and what our world is about, one of the things that got changed out of that was the parent nights were dropped or not a requirement of the program. And so, again, I just felt that it was something we needed to do and continue doing. So in our 3 schools that we do have impact in, our Stewartville School here, and Byron and Dover and Yoda schools, that's what we will do. We're going to try to, again, secure more dates and do the same thing in those places. So again, those people that maybe you thought would be here or should be here, there will be more opportunities. And we know that during the school year, we are up against all kinds of things you saw as you came in. I'm guessing you saw, I saw the boys basketball team leaving. I don't know who's in there now, but it's just the schools are very, very busy. So we thank the Stewartville School District for allowing us to come here. We don't teach DARE in our schools. We don't force ourselves on them. It's a partnership, and they have to want us here, and we're always very happy that we can continue doing that. So there's a lot of things that I would like to say more about, and I think what we'll do is we'll just get into the agenda, and then when we get to the question and answer period at the end, and that's where hopefully you have a pen. The back of the agenda is blank, so if you have questions, there's 2 ways to go about it. If you have a really burning question that needs to be answered at the moment, try to holler it out, but at the end, we'll have all the panelists move right up here in the front of the stage. They will have a microphone. I'll play, I don't know, some people might know this or not, but I'll play Phil Donahue, if you know who that is, and I'll run around and if you have a question, we'll get you the mic so that not only can the panelists hear you, but everybody can. And then, as I mentioned, we are streaming it, so we do want to have it loud enough so that those microphones can pick it up, and the streaming audience can also take part of that. So With that, I'm gonna get right into it with our DARE officer here at Stewart, Deputy Courtney Amos.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I am DARE Officer Deputy Courtney Amos. This is my first year doing DARE. And we just completed, I think we graduated 261 students this year. So it was a great first year for me. I had a lot of fun with it. Oops, sorry. I'm an anxiety talker. I'll calm down, I promise. Alrighty. No, I got ya. Alrighty, so we're going to talk about our DARE curriculum, or also our Keeping It Real. So Keeping It Real, so our curriculum is designed based on a socio-emotional learning theory, so SEL. SEL identifies fundamental basic skills and developmental processes needed for healthy development, including self-awareness and management, responsible decision-making, understanding others, relationship and communication skills, handling responsibilities and challenges. So SEL theory teaches youth to control their impulses and think about risks and consequences, resulting in more responsible choices. So real life situations that students will encounter from kids through kids to kids narrative approach. So the kids actually have a ton of interaction throughout our DARE courses. Alrighty, so we have 10 core lessons that are arranged in the scaffolding process, starting with the basics about responsibility and then decision making, and then building on each other, allowing students to develop their own responses to real life situations. So other than the 10 core lessons that we actually teach, we actually add on an 11th lesson, which isn't really like a lesson. We do a DARE role model day, so I'm actually here for 11 classes with students. So me and then the teachers that I work with, the health teachers, we pick out seniors, awesome seniors who have been making safe and responsible decisions, and they come in on the 11th day, and the kids are actually able to ask them, I say, pound with any questions you have about what it's like being a senior, if they have any questions about bullying, making safe, responsible decisions, how to deal with when people ask you peer pressure questions, with alcohol, tobacco, anything like that. So they're able to see it, not from just us adults, and they're like, you're old, they can actually talk to someone that they look up to that's closer to their age. Not that I'm too far off, I'd like to think, but. So we have a new theme of making safe and responsible choices. Did anybody here take DARE when they were in school? Okay, a few. So it's probably changed a lot since then, probably a ton. I feel like back then, when our lovely sheriff used to teach it, it was more very based off drugs, and alcohol. Now we only have one lesson that we actually really talk about tobacco and alcohol, and it's more about the kids making just good choices and how to be a good person essentially, and think for themselves is this a good idea? So that's more what it's about. So we use the DARE decision-making model to apply to real situations. So we'll go over that in this next slide, kind of what I was just talking about for making those responsible choices. So we also help students to learn how to communicate more effectively and develop stronger relationships with peers, family, and authority figures. So this is our DARE decision-making model. So it's define, assess, respond, and evaluate. And I always tell the kids, this is something that they do subconsciously anyway, but I say we like to bring it to light, that way they can actually, think about their decisions before just being like, yes, I'm gonna do it. So define, they have to figure out what the problem is, right? So I would say, what's your problem, okay? Assess, what are all the choices you have, all of them, negative and positive. What are all of your choices that you have? Respond, what choice are you gonna make? Not only what choice are you gonna make, what's the most responsible choice? What's gonna make you go further in life? What's the most responsible thing that's gonna be healthy as well? And then evaluate, did you make the right choice? Did you make the responsible choice? So the National Common Core standards for DARE's new Keep It Real curriculum is aligned with the National Common Core standards to provide a framework of core instruction in today's classrooms. The 10 lessons are aligned with the National Core 5th grade standards, since 5th grade students are the usual grade for level of introduction of DARE curriculum. Standards are noted on that website, corestandards.org. So 5th grade and 6th grade curriculum are the same curriculum. It's just, we can introduce it in 5th grade as well, so it's just the same that we teach our 6th graders. So the curriculum meets multiple national course standards in the area of reading, so literature, informational text, foundation skills, writing, speaking, and listening. So in conclusion, it is important to remember that DARE is not an automatic fix-all. It's not, I would love for the kids to come in and be like, yes, I will never drink and never smoke and never use drugs and always be responsible and healthy my entire life because I took this one class. It's not that simple. We like to use the example of driver's education, right? You can go to driver's education, they show you all the scary videos of car crashes and what can happen, you know, but people still speed and things like that. You know, they still drive recklessly, they still get DUIs, things like that. So we just have to keep in mind that this is information for them to use and hopefully get information out of so they can keep them back to burn as they get older. So it also involves a partnership with parents, teachers, and law enforcement to help students progress into safe and responsible citizens. I think that's all I have. All right. Detective Johnson?
All right, I'm Detective Dan Johnson. I work in the Sheriff's Office. I do investigations as well as working in the digital forensics lab. So what that means is I work with computers, cell phones, drones, cameras. If it's got a board and we need evidence off of it, it comes to my desk. So I'm here to talk about internet safety. My favorite slide ever. I'm just gonna let you guys read it for a second. That's parenting right there. So let's talk about that. What do your children do online? All right, so we go online for a number of reasons, right? Half of their classes are, 90% of their classes are online. They talk, they text, social media, check the score for the game, entertainment for YouTube, Netflix, all that jazz is online, right? Gaming systems are all online right now. Computer gaming, Xbox, PlayStation, all that stuff has an online connection, right? So they do a lot of stuff online. A lot of our life is online. So we gotta talk about some safety issues. What else is online? We have inappropriate content. Online privacy concerns, sexting's a concern. Online sexual solicitation, and cyberbullying are some of those things we worry about as parents. Kind of pick through those a little bit. First of all, how do they go online? How many people in here, their kids have a cell phone, smartphone? Okay. When I say smartphone, of course, I mean iPhone, Galaxy, one of those, where you can get online. So that's one, right? How many of your kids have school computers? Every single one of you, right? Those are online. Those, I think they're HP Stream books right now. There's almost no storage on those things. Everything that they do, kids are reaching out online. Friends' computers, laptops, tablets. We talked about cell phones. MP3 players, if they're not using their phone. iPod Touch. We're going back a little bit, but that's got an internet connection as well. Game consoles do more than just play games too. Xbox, PlayStation, the Nintendo Switch, all of those have active internet connections. They all have chat features that come with them. Some of them have chat features you can download. Internet browsers are on the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, X, S. All of those have an internet browser built in. Kids use apps like Discord and which the chat app will talk about in a minute. So all that stuff goes out. There's chat features. Even the games themselves have online chats. They wear them stupid headsets so that they can talk to their teammates, right? So all of those things are going out online. Technology can't catch everything, so communicate. The most important thing I'm going to say is talk to your kids. Okay? You have to know what they're into, what they're on, what they're doing. Every single app that has some way to communicate with other players, other users, other people, has the potential to be abused, right? By people that are at the various attentions. There's filters that catch a lot of stuff. They don't catch everything because there's something new every 10 minutes, right? So what are we going to talk to our kids about? With our younger children, I suggest you talk to people about etiquette. Etiquette is how you behave online. Being a bully, swearing at people, that stuff will get you banned from mass. And it's not the way you behave, right? Looking at inappropriate content. You're going to define what inappropriate content is for your child. For a young child, most of YouTube isn't even that appropriate, right? For an older child that's trying to learn how to change oil for the first time, not a bad time to watch a video. So what's appropriate changes by the age group. If you're not talking to your kids, they don't know what you think is appropriate, and they're going to find what they're going to find. Talk to them about pop-ups and passwords. Pop-ups aren't quite as big a deal as they were back in the day, but we're talking about those prompts that pop up and say, come here. You click on it and off you go to God knows where. Now it's more advertisements in the games. All those games are free, so they can advertise all kinds of stuff. Talk to them about not trusting everyone they meet. Stranger danger is an easy concept when you're talking about in person, but how about online? You could play the game with somebody for hours. You kind of feel like you trust them. You still don't tell them where you live. You certainly don't share your password, your birthday, those important things, right? So now we move on to our teens and our tweens. Cyberbullying, sexting, posting personal information, and meeting offline. Back in the day, they used to tell you, never get a car with a stranger. Now we use our phones to call a stranger to give us a ride, right? A little bit of a turn. Cyberbullying. When I taught DARE, which has been a couple years now, I always told kids, if you're not willing to say it in the middle of a crowded gym with your parents and the students, don't post it online. Okay? Sexting is absolutely a thing. And it's more of a thing than people would probably like to think about. I don't remember the exact statistic, but it's right around a third of high schoolers that were surveyed admitted to receiving sexts. Only about 17% admitted to sending them. Tells me about 15% relying. Okay? So you need to talk to your teen about what's appropriate. We'll kind of hit some of these a little bit more. So what can you do? Talk to your kids. Establish rules. When it comes down to it, that's your phone. You're the parent. It's your phone. You own it. You pay for the plan. It's yours. It's not theirs. So if they're going to use it, they need to understand what the rules are and what your expectations are. If you don't tell them what your expectations are, they have no idea what it is. So talk to your kids. Remind children that anything they send can easily be forwarded. Okay? When you're madly, deeply in love as a 14-year-old child and you send a picture of inappropriate things to the person you're madly, deeply in love with, it's great. It doesn't go anywhere. Anybody here married to who they were dating as a 14-year-old? Not me. So what are they going to do with that after you break up, after you fight? Think about that. Have them think about that. When shopping for a cell phone, research security settings. Okay? Some kids are great with devices. They understand, they get it. They're not sharing their stuff online. They're keeping their bits and pieces to themselves. Awesome. If you have a kid that you're worried about, maybe consider some monitoring software. Verizon's big in this area. They have something built into their plans. If you research online, literally just Google monitoring children cell phone, and you'll find a ton of different apps. Bark, I think, is one. There's a bunch. So if you've got a kid that you got to worry about a little bit more, maybe consider that. There we go. So what are some of these apps? We got social media apps, websites. These change daily, but there are some core ones. How many people are on Facebook? Why your kids aren't. Instagram, Twitter are, kind of your standard. Snapchat. There's a bunch more though. There's a new one every day. Everybody's trying to catch on to that social media stuff, so there's a new one every day. Discord muted the slide. When Discord came out, it was designed to keep people that played multiplayer games together in groups outside of the game. So it was a chat app, it was a messaging app. You could talk over it, you could share files if you really wanted to. And there's message boards, all kinds of stuff. So if everybody's in the same kind of game, you had a group that you like to play with, you put in Discord together, you talk on that. Well, what did I just tell you? You can talk on it, you can share files, there's message boards, okay? So a lot of my recent cases have included Discord. I had a person recently that had their cell phone taken away, their school computer taken away, and they were still managing to talk to somebody using Discord on their Xbox. I have a PlayStation, either way. So this is an ever-evolving list. If you don't recognize what it is on your kid's phone, check the App Store. There's a description of it right on there. How about photo sharing? We've got Snapchat, Facebook Messenger, Kik, WhatsApp, Google Hangouts, Skype, WhatsApp, I think it said. There's a bunch, there's a pile of them. There's a ton of messengers out there. Almost all of those messengers have some sort of file sharing, photos, videos, other files. You just kind of got to research and know what these are. Apps of concern. On top of all of those, we do have some that are more specifically designed for hiding things from parents. There's calculator apps, Calculator Plus, Audio Manager, Balti. All of those are applications that are designed to look like one thing and hide something else. So Calculator Plus is the one I played with because, of course, I've got to go check into this stuff, right? So if you hit Calculator Plus, it looks just like the Calculator app on an Android. I'm not sure what the iPhone looks like, but I think they're pretty similar. If you type in the same number, the right numbers, and then plus, it opens a photo vault. Inside that photo vault is whatever you decide to stick there. I'm sure it's all pictures of puppies, but if you're trying to hide something from somebody, and they've got two calculator apps, you might want to check on both. Other notable apps and websites. Reddit is a messaging board, basically. Reddit's got everything from celebrity news to advice to, the depths of the internet. Musically, not quite as big as a deal. Again, some of these kind of rise and fall as we go. Omegle's one I like to talk about. There's another one I just saw the other day that's just like it, but Omegle, their tagline is talk to strangers. Chat Roulette's another one that's very similar. So what it does is you jump on this website and it'll direct you towards a random stranger. And you start talking. You get sick of that stranger, you hit a button, next random stranger. So as you click through, some people are doing funny stuff, some people are out there just talking, some people are disturbing. Okay? Omegle's one where you can meet people in areas of interest as well. They have kind of chat rooms so strangers into puppies, strangers into whatever. So if you're looking for something, you'll go in there and look for a chat room, and then again, strangers with similar interests. So what are the risks? We have risks of sharing or oversharing, right? Personal information is important. To open a credit card in somebody's name, you need their name. You don't have to get the address right. You don't have to be that close on spelling the name. Social security number is handy. Date of birth is even handier. But you don't need much. Passwords are a big one. Every time your kid logs into Fortnite, there's a scroll along the bottom that says Fortnite or will not ask for passwords, do not share your passwords. Hacking, online enticement, you know, if you give somebody your password, it's not surprising when all of your accounts change, right? Online enticement, solicitation, there's a lot of things we can be looking for on there. People trying to extort money, sextortion, which was just in the news recently. What is sextortion? Usually sextortion looks like this. Hey, you're kind of cute, let's talk. They talk some. Hey, can you send me nude? Sure, why not? Okay, I'm gonna need $50 or I'm gonna share your nudes with your entire friends list. That's sextortion in 8 seconds, okay? Usually people are targeting males on social media because we're dumb. And that's it. So in the space of 30 minutes, your kid has gone from, hey, somebody new, to, oh crap. And it's a problem. I've always told my kids, if you don't know them in real life, don't have them as friends. And I know that's not a realistic approach, but that is my goal. If you can't put a face to a name and a house to a face, you run the risk of running, you know, some of these are really elaborate. I had one a couple years ago where this guy was talking to somebody, this kid, and they put on a cam show for him. And it looked like they were talking to him, it looked like they were sharing nudes back and forth. And as you watched it, they would only talk as they type, okay? You would see somebody type, and this cute girl was typing, and that's when messages would come through. Come to find out, that was a 50-year-old guy living in Canada that was talking to this kid. But he had timed that video and would only talk during it. But you would see things that are off, like he didn't quite talk right because he was actually an Indian guy living in Canada. So if you look at something that's weird, they're using words that people wouldn't around here wouldn't use. That's a clue. Okay, anything that looks off is probably off. What can you do? Establish rules about what they share. Okay, we have screen names for a reason. Use those. Never share where you live, what your date of birth is, home phone number, home address, all that, right? Learn about reporting options. Most of those have a report content button. At the end of this slide, or at the end of this, my portion of the presentation, and in the back, there's a bunch of places you can report stuff. NetNet is one of them, so look for that on there. Help them with their privacy settings, okay? Snapchat maps should not be on public. Literally follow somebody through town on that. Help them create strong passwords and talk about friends lists. That's what I was talking about, right? If you don't know them, you might know I have. There's my statistic, or my statistic, 27%. So why are they sexting? Some are funny, some are bored, some want to impress somebody. Peer pressure. There is nobody more persuasive than a 60-year-old boy trying to get a nude. Okay, they're going to keep asking. They're experimenting, they're learning relationships, sexual behaviors, and boundaries. Okay, everybody has to have their own boundaries. Consequences of sexting we talked about. Sometimes these end up in schools going around too, so sometimes there can be some discipline with that. Once again, talk to your kids. Online solicitation looks really similar. Any of those apps we talked about, it's just what they're asking for. I had one a couple years back. The guy was in chat rooms on Facebook for teens with depression. And he was pretending to be a counselor. So he would talk about being a counselor. Hey, you're great, you seem nice. Hey, I don't normally do this, but, and then we would go down the solicitation path. So you need to talk to your kids about where their line is and not to cross it. It's not, oh, he seems nice, it's, hey, this seems off, okay? When those bells and whistles are going off the back of your head, there's a reason for it. Grooming is all about exploiting natural curiosity. Hey, I'll show you this, and then this gets a little deeper every time. It's exactly the same as solicitation. Again, it's just a little different twist. Signs of grooming. Your kid's getting gifts from strangers they've never met. That's a huge red flag, right? They're suddenly calling unknown numbers. You see numbers popping up on your bill from area codes you've never heard of before. They start redirecting family and friends. That's a big thing with grooming. Ooh, your parents don't understand yet. Let's not talk to them. You just talk to me. Getting upset when they're not online, more than normal. And every time you come around, that screen goes black or gets twisted over or whatever. That's cool. Kids are capable. If you talk to them and they have their boundaries, they're going to do the right thing. I've seen that exact thread way more than once. Reading through chats on cases I've worked. A lot of them are like, you're gross, block me. I don't need any part of this. So if you talk to them and they're smart, they'll do the right thing. You can learn the lingo. These are just some quick ones. If your kid's talking about meet IRL, they want to meet somebody for real season. Okay, that's a big one. These are the reference sites I was talking about, and they are in the handouts in the back. MissingKids.com, they have NetSmarts and NetSmarts 411. FamilyEducation.com, NetLingo is where you can steal a lot of those. What word did my kid just say? NetLingo is a good one. Urban Dictionary, also a good one. And then NECMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I don't have on there, and I should. That's where you get tips or that's where we get tips from for internet crimes against children. Task force. Next, we are going to bring up investigator Joel Johnson, Force and Drug Trends.
Good evening. I'm Investigator Joel Johnson with the Sheriff's Office. I'm assigned to the local drug task force. Today we're going to go over some drug trends, things that we are seeing here locally here in Olmsted County and all across Minnesota and the country. In our community issues, teenage alcohol and chemical use. Alcohol itself, the numbers are remaining pretty steady as far as drinking and driving goes, things like that. However, we're seeing an increase in cases involving marijuana use and prescription medications. The marijuana one's becoming bigger and bigger as it gets, unfortunately, closer and closer to legality. It's becoming easier and easier to get, it seems. So some of the types of drugs that we are seeing on the bigger end of things are methamphetamine. That's going to be our biggest. We're seeing a ton of that all over southeast Minnesota, all over the state, and all over the country. Marijuana, marijuana derivatives such as the wax, oils, and the edibles. Heroin. Fentanyl has unfortunately made a huge presence as of late. Fentanyl has been found in pretty much everything from our cocaine to meth to our heroin to just pure fentanyl, even our prescription pills now. Our prescription drugs, which we'll talk a bit more about, cocaine. Cocaine has made a comeback locally. I don't know if it's economy driven or what it is, but it is coming around. Ecstasy, the club drugs, we don't see as much around here. That's more of the big cities. LSD and acid, it's kind of a niche group as well, so we're seeing it a little bit, but not a ton. And the psilocybin mushrooms. We are stumbling upon grows of mushrooms. We actually just did a search warrant the other day where we seized 3.5 pounds of psilocybin mushrooms out of a residence. First, talk about methamphetamine a little bit. This is kind of the different pictures of what it can look like. It comes in several different forms. Across the top is more of a powder form. That is more of the old school meth that you were seeing that was locally cooked. In about 2009, pseudoephedrine was put behind the counters. It was limited on how much you could purchase. So the production of methamphetamine pretty much dropped off and is almost unheard of locally anymore, which is a great thing. However, other people saw this as an opportunity to step in. So now we have crystal meth, which is the stuff on the bottom, looks more like ice. Crystal looks like shards of ice or crystals. That's being brought up mainly out of Mexico, and it's being brought up literally by the truckload. In 2019, this is a seizure from 2019 of 50 pounds of meth was found in the gas tank of a pickup truck that was coming up out of Arizona. I'd like to say this is the biggest bust we've had in Olmsted County, but unfortunately it's not. We have busts of 75 pounds. We had just this year in Olmsted County alone, we see 201 pounds of methamphetamine. So like I said, it's coming up in insane numbers. If you think about this, you know, an average user probably buys 3.5 grams, which is an 8-ball in drug terms, you know, to use or as a user amount, and probably don't use that over the course of a day or two. Well, there's 454 grams in a pound, 50 pounds here. We're looking at over 6,000 dosages, I guess you could say, of user amounts just in this one bust that we did. And these are happening daily across the country. Next, look at heroin. Heroin comes in several different forms as well. We got black tar heroin, brown powder heroin, white, and we get some gray stuff. We see a lot of different colors. A lot of it depends on what it's cut with. The black tar is not very common around here. It's more out on the coast, and it's a lot more powders. The colors vary. I mean, we've seen purple, white, pink, all sorts of stuff. Like I said, it all depends on what it's cut with. Speaking of the cutting agents, cutting stuff, this here is an example of our street pharmacists at their best. They're cutting their stuff to try to make their profits higher. They get a little bit of heroin, they add a lot of cut, they then sell it to people, and it inflates their profit margin. So they're cutting with things like Rizzy. We're not seeing it locally here, thank God, but around the country, this Rizzy's been used as a cutting agent in heroin. It's like a dye for flowers or something like that. And people are injecting this, and it's starting to eat away at their skin. So this might not be local, but what it comes down to is this is happening. There's cutting agents of all sorts that are being put into these things, and these people have no idea what it is they're putting into it. They're not pharmacists, they're not scientists, they have no perfect method. They're putting stuff into a blender, they hit run, they take it out and they put it into their baggies. You have no idea what's coming into this stuff. So that leads us into fentanyl. Fentanyl is started off being put into heroin. It's much stronger. As you can see here, fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that's 100 times stronger than morphine and up to 50 times stronger than heroin. The picture here depicts just how much fentanyl it takes to be lethal. It's a very minimal amount. Heroin, it's also a low amount, but in terms of what fentanyl is, it's crazy. So it started out that fentanyl is being mixed into heroin because it was making it stronger, making it more addictive. They say the best high for a heroin user is an overdose high. The closer you can get to that overdose, the better the feeling is. So they're always trying to get to that next high. And when they get to that high, they always want to get back to it. So the people that are bringing this heroin up, they started adding fentanyl to it because it started making that high stronger and stronger and stronger. And people wanted it more and more and more, and then it just increased. Well, now we switch to, well, the fentanyl is synthetic, we can make it, we can do things like that, we can get it cheaper. So now we switched to basically we're just seeing pure fentanyl. When people tell us we're buying heroin, I would say 90% of the time we're buying fentanyl. We're not seeing a lot of heroin around here lately, it's straight fentanyl. In 2022, Olmsted County sees 75 pounds of powder fentanyl. So if you think about 75 pounds, and you look at that far left vial, you think about how much it takes and how many people could be killed from that 75 pounds. And that's just here in Olmsted County. Now, let's move that across this entire country. And the statistics match this. Here in Minnesota alone, opioid-involved overdose deaths among Minnesotans have increased 44% from 2020 to 2021, and the number of deaths has more than doubled since 2019. These numbers, I don't know how accurate they are, because I know there's a lot of different things that go into it. As law enforcement, we don't get all the numbers given to us. If somebody's brought into a hospital and left in a hospital by a dealer, a friend, whoever it is, and that person passes away of a drug overdose, we don't get notified. So there are some numbers that we don't see in Olmsted County. Now with these numbers, these are just the deaths. We're not seeing the number of overdoses that are saved. Every day, people are overdosing, and either they're saving themselves, they're giving away naloxone, Narcan, all that stuff, and they're saving themselves or their buddies, or else law enforcement's arriving on scene and saving them once they're called. So the number of deaths would be through the roof if it wasn't for these other opiate blockers. Keeping along the fentanyl lines, counterfeit oxycodone is another huge problem that we've run into in the last couple of years. If you look on the left, you got an authentic 30 milligram oxycodone pill. You look on the right, you got a fake one. Very hard to tell the difference. People think that they're buying the real stuff. I will tell you that 99% of the time they're getting the fake stuff. And at this point, people are just looking for the fake stuff because they know it's fentanyl. In 2022 alone, Olmsted County sees 40,000 of these pills. Now, the lab results show that were recently done that 6 out of 10 of these pills contain a lethal dose of fentanyl. Now, it's obviously all dependent on your tolerance, things like that, but with numbers like that, just think how many 40,000 pills, how many people could be killed by that. Now, these pills are everywhere. They can be mistaken with the prescription pills, things like that. But we'll go a little deeper into the prescription stuff here shortly. So I spoke about the Narcan a little bit. All of our deputies, our first responders, everybody here in Olmsted County is outfitted with Narcan. We're all trained how to use it. Actually, yesterday we took one of our quarterly trainings. We just worked on it, learning how to do it, making sure we're doing it right. There's a lot of people that are overdosing, and they're doing it daily. You know, one of the EMT guys that we talked to said that he's been to the same person 8 times. A lot of people have questions about, you know, sometimes why are we doing this? Why are we spending all this money? Why are we doing this? We're doing it for that person, but we're also doing it for people's families. There's a lot of people that are affected by the death of an overdose. Working in narcotics, I respond to a lot of the overdose deaths. I work the overdose deaths. I see the families that are affected by it, and we're working with them. And they're the ones that are suffering in the end, you know, as we work through that process. They're very hard to prosecute. It's hard to find somebody that is a suspect in this. So the Narcan itself is saving more than just that person. It's helping that family. So the Narcan itself is an opiate blocker, and what it does is once somebody overdoses or somebody takes an opiate, the stuff that we carry, it's a 4 milligram spray that we can spray up a person's nostril. And what it does is I don't know the science behind it, but it goes in and it blocks the receptor so that the opiate that they just ingested or took or smoked or whatever, it blocks that. It takes that away. It's good, obviously, in the fact that it can save the person. It's bad in the fact that when it takes that away from them, it takes away their high, and they immediately snap out of it, or they can very quickly snap out of it, and sometimes become aggressive, angry, mad, whatever it is, because now you just took their high away from them. Whatever money they spent on that heroin, that fentanyl, is now gone, and now they got to go find their next fix. They don't care that you saved them a lot of the times. They just want to sign a medical release and get on to the next one. But it is a savior, and we're using it on a regular basis. Cocaine, I had said previously that it's on the rise again here in Olmsted County. A couple years ago, this is a picture that we had seized 4 kilos of cocaine coming up out of Texas. That was the biggest bust we'd had in a long time. I wish it would have stayed that way, however it hasn't. In 2022, we seized 95 pounds of cocaine. Like I said, we're not sure why the increase of it. We've heard different statistics with things in Mexico with them having a harder time getting precursors for meth, so now they're trying to push cocaine up here. Also, cocaine's a little more expensive. Sometimes when the economy's better, cocaine becomes more prevalent because it's easier, you can afford it better, things like that. So unfortunately, we are seeing an increase in that. Now we get to the marijuana. It's a hot button topic. Here we got several different things. We got the marijuana flower, which is the actual bud, the stuff that you smoke. Probably the most common thing that a lot of adults have seen or been around in their time. A lot of stuff you're smoking or not you were smoking, but people were smoking back, several years ago, 5, 10, 15% THC levels. I mean, if you got to 15, it was insane. We're looking at stuff now where these cartridges, that wax on the far side, and these edibles, we're looking at like 90% or higher THC levels. So the high from them is incredibly stronger than what it was before. And a lot of this stuff is extremely dangerous. We've been to overdoses of this, essentially, where a parent leaves it out and a kid gets at it. A little kid will get into this, will take one of these thinking they're a fruit snack. I mean, if you look at those on the bottom, this top picture is actually a seizure from an apartment in Rochester where we took about 200 pounds of edibles that this guy was making himself. When you walked in there, it smelled delicious. There was, I mean, he was making Jello, all this stuff, nerd ropes, all sorts of candy that was all laced with THC. You bring that home, you have that around your kids, your young kids. They don't know any better. They think they're eating nerds, candy ropes, something like that. Next thing you know, they're eating 90% pure THC. So you gotta be very careful with that stuff. Keep an eye on that. You know, we're seeing that more and more. If you have seen stuff with your kids that they're just not acting right, they're hiding their backpack, doing stuff like that, keep an eye on that stuff. Be looking for this stuff because unfortunately it's out there. The vapes are becoming a huge thing. We're seeing those pretty much everywhere. So this is a seizure of marijuana wax or dabbing. Wax is essentially a derivative that's taken from the marijuana leaf or the stems and seeds. A lot of the stuff that used to just be garbage that couldn't be used or smoked, they're now taking and they're using solvents to break it down, creating this marijuana wax, which then makes it usable. This stuff, again, is very potent. We're looking at like 80–90% THC levels. It costs between $50 and $60 a gram. So the value of this one little bit here is looking at $5,000 to $5,800 just for that little bit. So, as I said here, THC content is high as 90% or greater. The effects include problems with memory, learning, difficulty in thinking, and loss of coordination. And for all that, it only takes a dab. So when they're smoking this, using this, they call it a dab. It doesn't take a lot. Very little amounts of this stuff can be very potent, especially for people that don't use it. Some of the stuff to look for, different paraphernalia, things like that people are using to smoke their drugs or ingest it. You know, the methamphetamine, things like that, the bulb up on top. Marijuana is going to be more your middle one there. Just another bong over there. The scales, have you ever seen scales? I mean, I don't know. Myself, I've never used a scale that measures in 1 to 2 grams. If you're seeing scales like that, that's an indicator that something's going on. Because they're measuring out small amounts of marijuana, small amounts of meth, things like that. You know, we're not seeing a ton of meth amongst our high school students, stuff like that, thank God. But if that stuff starts leaking into our schools, the stuff we gotta be looking for is these kind of things. People always wonder why, you know, what's the turn on for it all? Everybody sees how you turn out, how it affects your body. Well, the true driver is money. A lot of this stuff we're seizing several $1,000s at a time for people that, you know, some people have never seen that kind of money. They could work some job for weeks on end and not have a dollar spare at the end of the time by the time they pay all their bills. Or they can go do this, they can go out and sling drugs for a few hours at night and they got themselves several $1,000s. That's the driving force behind a lot of the dealers. Talk about prescription drugs a little bit. They are still a problem. We're still having issues with them. People are still selling them, counterfeiting them, things like that. Everybody is being prescribed drugs for everything now. Adderall for our kids for ADHD, all the different, the oxys for pain, the fentanyl patches, things like that. We need to be very cognizant of those things. Keep them under lock and key. Keep them away from our kids. We're not seeing it as much now because now these fake oxy pills are becoming so prevalent, people aren't as much going into the cabinets. That doesn't mean that they won't. If it's easily accessible, they'll get at it. Like I said, you know, you got your guns. You got the one on the left here, not real secure. Your kids can probably figure out how to get in and get at those guns. You got the one on the right, pretty secure. You know, you're gonna want to do that with your firearms. Same thing gonna be with your medications. You put it in a medicine cabinet in your bathroom, or you put it in a drawer, or you put it in a cupboard. It's easily accessible. Your kids can get at it. They can use it. They can sell it. They can do whatever. Keep it under lock and key. Keep it somewhere where only you know how to get at it, even if it's their medication. If you have any concerns about your kid with their medications, keep it under lock and key. And when it's time to give them a medication, open up the lockbox and give your kid a medication. You don't want this stuff getting out, you know, especially when it comes to the painkillers. That's the painkillers. That's what's leading to a lot of our addictions with the opiates. Here at the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, we have kind of a way to mitigate some of this stuff. A lot of people end up with extra pills. They get overprescribed. A loved one, a parent, a family member, whatever passes away, they have tons tons of drugs, tons of painkillers, they don't know what to do with them, bring them to the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office. We have a drug drop box, it's a drug disposal box. It's right inside the vestibule of the Adult Detention Center. You can put any drugs in there 365 days a week, even if you were to find some illicit drug or something. Hopefully package it safely, it can be put in there. But we don't want, random stuff, hydrogen peroxide, sunscreen, stuff like that. You'd be amazed at what we find in this box. Keep it to, the drugs, the stuff that's prescription, things like that, that we want to keep off our streets. This has been a huge helper. The DEA started this several years ago. We do a couple drug take-backs a year, but then on a daily basis, this is available for people to get rid of their stuff, to safeguard it from their kids, things like that. This here is a price breakdown of some of the drugs. I talked about the money a little bit before and kind of why it's so incentivized and why people want to do this. You can look at some of these prices and it shows you, why it is what it is. We go to the bottom here with the fentanyl pills. Here locally, we're looking at $5 for a pill, where you go up to the Iron Range or up somewhere up north, and you're looking at $80 a pill. You can buy those pills for $1.50 to $2 in Arizona right now. They're bringing up 50, 60, 100,000 pills at a time. They're buying them for $1. You take them up to the Iron Range in Minnesota, you sell them for $80 a pill. That's the reason why this stuff is so prevalent up here. And it's like that across the board for pretty much everything. The prices, they've come down a lot just because of the supply and demand. There's such a high supply that the price has gone down, so it's making it easier and easier for people to use it and getting hooked on this stuff. So in Olmsted County, we also have a drug court. Drug court mission is to integrate drug treatment services with the criminal justice system to provide an alternative to incarceration for nonviolent criminal drug offenders. Like I tell every drug offender that I talk to, that I work with, my ultimate goal is to get them off the drug. We want to get stuff off the street, but we also want to get these people clean. 99% of these people are great people when they're not clouded by the drugs, the things like that. So if they're clean and sober, they can make good, clear-headed decisions. A lot of them are great people. You get them on the drugs, they're completely different, changes them, changes their families, and just screws everything up. So at the end of the day, we're using things like drug court to hopefully, curb some of that. Help get some of these people on the straight and narrow, get them to where they need to be so that they can be productive members of society. Last but not least, I am part of the Southeast Minnesota Violent Crime Enforcement Team. We work primarily in narcotics. We are available all hours of the day. We work as an 8-county task force here locally, and we will take any tips that we can get. No matter how big or small, we will vet them and determine what we have time to work on. If you have something, please don't hesitate to call the sheriff's office. Ask for a task force member. If it has something to do with drugs, we're more than willing to take a look at it. That being said, I'll turn it over to Deputy Jason Owen.
All right, thank you, Joel. So as Joel was talking about all the drugs in Olmsted County, gave you the rundown on that. I'm going to focus more on what's prevalent in our teens and our schools. So what we're mostly seeing in our schools is marijuana, prescription pills. I've categorized e-cigs and tobacco as well in that category. We see less of, and there's a caveat here with alcohol. Alcohol is a major issue with teen use, but the purpose of this, it's not really found inside the school. It's more of an issue outside of school. Things like meth, as Joel mentioned, LSD, not a huge issue in school. I mean, God forbid those things become prevalent in schools, but at this point, we're fortunate that it's not a widespread issue. So why are our youth using drugs? Same reason they do everything. Peers, stress management, they get used for, some of the older teens will use stimulants for study practices, help keep them awake. One of my pet peeves is public perception and social media, what our kids are exposed to, Hollywood stars who they look up to as heroes in many cases. It's a lot of drug use just gets glorified, and there's no doubt about it that exposure that they're getting is affecting their choices. Ease of access, a lot of the reasons that these ones that are more prevalent, like marijuana, prescription pills, it's easy access for our kids. Marijuana is prevalent in society. In some states it's legal. It's easy to get into Minnesota, easy to get into Olmsted County. Another reason kids might use it is they get these pills from at home from mom and dad, and they're able to make a little money off it, sell it to other kids, trade it for things like that. So tips for parents. It says there, use your nose. That's just another term for be nosy. You know, talk to your kids, have face-to-face conversations, get to know their parents. You know, kids will tell you they're doing one thing, and we all know that that might not be the case. But if you're talking with each other's parents, you know, it's more difficult for them to pull the wool over your eyes. So you need to know what your kids are doing, where they're going at night, why they got home late, things like that. Pay attention to all the signs of physical signs, coughs, well, red eyes, you know, watch for mood changes. Depression is either it can lead to drug use, and it can also be a symptom of drug use. Who are they hanging out with? Their vehicles, if they're a driving age, check that vehicle every once in a while. That's where things get hidden. Look in the left compartment, look in the cubbies and consoles, and you might find some indicators in there, just some drug paraphernalia, anything suspicious, and we'll get into more of these things later. Just a chart here. I'm not going to read through all of that. It's too many words, but this goes over a lot of the physical changes you might notice for kids at home, and just pay attention to these. A lot of it's just things out of the ordinary, changes of behavior, rashes, burnt lips, things. All these things are. So marijuana, one of the most common drugs used, if you're not including alcohol. It's a kind of an accepted thing in society now. We can debate about whether it should be illegal or not, but I think all of us here would agree that we should at least not want our kids using it. Some of these terms here, some things you become familiar with, just the clothing people wear, the terms kush, ounces, 420, signifying the April 20th as the unofficial holiday of marijuana. Just get familiar with these terms, and if your kids are using them, ask them, where did you hear that? Why, what does that mean? You might not even know what it means. Like I said, marijuana is one of the most commonly used drugs, partly because it's legal in many areas. A lot of the symptoms include the altered senses, perceptions, mood changes, coordination, yeah, just pay attention to these signs, and then changes of appetite is another one. Just all these behaviors could be an indicator. Another common, easy to get to drug, and this would fall into the category of over-the-counter medications, is cough syrup, due mostly to the ingredient dextromorphin. The slang terms there, like such as DXM, Dexing, Orange Crush, a lot. Scissor was another one that's used a lot, and they use this cough syrup. Sometimes they'll mix it with pop, other drinks to help with the taste and such. But that is, even though it's an over-the-counter drug, if you take it in large quantities, it can be very dangerous. It gives like a lethargic, hallucinogenic effect, that the high that the kids might be looking for. Like I said, the symptoms of DXM here are hallucinations, out-of-body sensations, having trouble controlling your limbs, impaired judgment. And like I said, it might seem safe because it's a low over the counter, but if used in large quantities, it can cause loss of consciousness, seizures, and even death. Another one of the pills that prescription pills that we often see is Xanax. Xanax itself is treated for like ADHD, things like that. I also don't want to exclude things like painkillers, oxycodone, and then of course we have the issues with counterfeit oxycodone containing fentanyl. But you might see your kids use or see the terms bars, bicycle handlebars, blackout boys, benzos, footballs, ladders, planks, school bus. Most of those words are referencing the look of the pill, which is that yellow pill there that's kind of, I guess, looks like a school bus or a yellow bar, as they call it. Some of the effects that Xanax would have: sleepiness, lethargic, slurred, nonsensical speech, slowed or labored breathing, and a slowed pulse rate, lack of coordination, muscle control, and it can lead to difficulty in walking, and then dizziness, lightheaded, confusion, dulled senses, and a reduced reaction time. All right, so some of the clothing and then some of the lingo that you might see. Dabby, as we talked about, with marijuana wax, hemp bracelets, just the marijuana culture on its own. You know, it's just kind of seeped in society that it's acceptable, in many places legal, but I go with, just because something's legal doesn't mean you should do it, or that it's good for you, or that it's even safe. Some of the club drugs, and these are some of the drugs that aren't just prevalent in the schools, but still that kids do use, but not, it's not prevalent in Olmsted County, and it's not being brought into our schools at a high rate. Some concealment products that you should all be aware of, and these are, you know, as a belt buckle, some belts, and you can get these types of items off of Amazon. You can get them at gift shops like Spencer's Gifts, large truck stops, travel centers have them, adult stores. All these items here described as are concealed as personal hygiene products, but actually they're hidden compartments. Some more personal hygiene products, and some other home devices. Okay, vaping and e-cigarettes. So as we all know, vaping is the inhaling of an aerosol. It's not tobacco, but it uses nicotine, so it's just as addictive as tobacco, and also unhealthy. It's still bad for your health. It has harmful chemicals, glycerol, propylene, glycol, things that I don't even know what they are, but linked to cancer, things like that. They're just as addictive as cigarettes, and kids are using them very prevalently because they're much easier to hide. They don't have the smell that cigarettes do. Easy to hide because they're a little older, very small. They are distributed. They have the flavors they use are very appealing to our kids. Cotton candy flavors, strawberry flavors. One of the more popular brands of vaping is the Juul product. It's very small, like the size of a USB drive, and they have quite a large market. Here's a comparison of the Juul device to a USB drive. So then, to summarize here at the end, I mean, what happens if your kid gets caught? We can get involved. Law enforcement, work with the parents. We can ticket the individual if it's a serious enough offense. It's can be arrestable depending on the drug that's found. And then it's the court probation, but main thing is the responsibility really needs to start with the parents at home and the schools, because there's only so much law enforcement can do. It's gotta be the parents communicating with the kids and the schools to get a handle on this. And with that, I'm gonna turn this over then to Andrea White. She's with Safe Harbor and Olmsted County Victim Services. I believe she's gonna talk about sex trafficking and extortion.
How's everyone doing? It's a lot of topics to talk about tonight, right? So I am going to join the conversation. My name is Andrea White. I'm the Safe Harbor Regional Navigator for Southeastern Minnesota. And a part of my job is really just being the first point of contact in any moments where we have labor, sex trafficking, exploitation, or anyone that might be at risk for any of those. We are housed in Olmsted County Victim Services. We serve an 11-county region in southeastern Minnesota. And alongside myself, I also have a team of case managers. I like to say that they're the meat and potatoes of our work, because they work with youth day in and day out, really coming alongside them, getting wraparound services, and of course, educating on this topic. So as you might see here, we are funded by the Minnesota Department of Health, and the reason why I mention that is it's really important to understand that we've talked this evening about grooming and other things that might lead you to have concern before victimization occurs. And I want to give you all hope that as much as you've heard talking to your children, that's prevention. And that's really the state where we want to live, not intervention. And so a big part of our program is being here this evening and talking with all of you so that we can have these conversations day in and day out with our youth in hopes to avoid any victimizations that might occur. So I always like to get started on the same page. When I use the words exploitation and trafficking, that might be the verbiage that I use every day because it's my job, but we don't use that in our daily lives, do we? So when I talk about exploitation, this lies on the spectrum of sexual violence, and this is any point in time where we have two parties, where one is looking to exchange something of value for a sexual act. That something of value can be a lot of different things. It could be your ride home from school. It could be a relationship. It could be alcohol. It could be drugs, right? And so if there's a need, an unmet need that's present with our youth, a lot of times folks are coming in to groom them to receive a sexual act in exchange. Now, we've talked a little bit about explicit content online this evening, both images and videos. That would be encapsulated in that sexual exploitation definition. And below, I like to say that when you look at it on the spectrum of sexual violence, we have exploitation. We know that's a precursor. Oftentimes, folks will then groom their victims to be trafficked, right? And so anytime we have a trafficking case, we're gonna still have that foundation of exploitation, but what we're gonna do and what changes that definition is you're gonna have a third party. That third party is the one who's not only initiating, setting it up, planning it, they're also the one who's receiving the benefits on the back end. Okay, so these are both of the crimes that we cover and the experiences of our victims, but also we work with folks who are at risk for either of these. Okay, so a lot of the things that we as caregivers or parents might have concerns about, that's gonna increase that risk for someone to come in and say, hey, I can be your friend, right? Mom and dad, they're really not listening, are you? My parents were terrible. How about you and I connect? Just like Detective Johnson was talking about some of those grooming techniques and the language that they use to pull folks in. Now I have it on this graphic here because I like to really just point out that this isn't a black and white issue. This is intersectional, this is complex. Many of our victims have had really traumatic lives where they may have had victimizations in their youth, they may have struggles with their mental health, chemical dependency. So there's a lot of needs that folks have when they present in our office for services. I also like to get started on some of the language that we use nowadays. So how many of you have seen Pretty Woman? Taken, right? The media really likes to grab on to trafficking, and we've seen a lot of progression, especially here in Minnesota. We're a large leader when it comes to having a response to exploitation and trafficking. And so I just put this up here to really kind of show the shift in the language, where we now can understand and come behind that this is something that happens to someone, right? People don't ask to be sexually assaulted. They also don't ask to be sex trafficked. So when we are shifting our language, I just think it's important to be kind to people and educate, and so that's really what this slide is here. No longer are we using pimp. We know that pimp has some preconceived stigmas or stereotypes, right? You might think of an identity or someone when you hear that word, but really we have traffickers and exploiters of all identities. I've had cases of grandmothers exploiting youth. I've had cases of parents. I've had siblings, I've had friends. So when we are looking at this, we really want to make sure that we're opening up our language to encapsulate the full experience, because if we're not talking about what this looks like, then we're going to miss out on that conversation. And if it's the one thing that you take home today is what Detective Johnson said, talk to your kids, and use the right language when we're doing that. So Kyle, if you could play this video. I have a short clip for all of you to watch, and then I just want to let you all sit in taking in what this video covers. Stick with us, the suspense is building. I promise the video's worth it. That's okay. So I'm gonna give you guys a link. This here is taken from Thorn. It's another great resource. We've thrown out a couple here this evening. Thorn is specific to supporting parents and caregivers as they tackle these conversations. And really what this video entails and why I like it so much is it starts out with talking about how we might be seeing the next tech unicorn, right? How connected we are, how at ease it is to communicate with the people in your life. And you might think that that's a great thing, but if we don't realize the connections that are being made by people who want to harm others, especially people who are vulnerable, we can see how this maybe isn't the great direction that we're going in, right? And so I always say that as much as we're talking with our youth, with them coming home from school, debriefing the day, right? Who did you sit with at lunch? Who did you play with at recess? You should be checking in with them. What apps are you using? Who are you talking to? What games do you play, right? In a car, it's a great place. Park those butts right in the seat, and then you got them for what, 10, 15 minutes is typically the rides around this area. So have those conversations and use those as just everyday examples to keep on checking in with your youth. Use it as a moment of education. I think I'm gonna show some other resources here this evening, but go home, pull this video up, watch it with your youth, and then talk about it. The video is 1.5 minutes, but that takes the pressure off of you as the caregiver, right? To come in and have this big, heavy conversation that can be intimidating. And we wanna equip you all as caregivers with the best resources and tools that we all use as professionals every day. So I want you guys to go ahead and read this slide. Detective Johnson said a little bit about this. He mentioned the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They are the clearinghouse whenever we have a cyber tip online that's flagged for that child sexual abuse material or child pornography, as we used to say. So as you can see here, what happened during COVID? Where were our youth? Online, right? And we saw a dramatic increase in the exploitation of our youth online during this time. So it reads, in 2021, NCMEC's cyber tip line received 29.3 million reports of suspected child exploitation. This is an increase of 35% from 2020. What happened from 2020 to 2021? We went onto our devices because we couldn't be in person. And so don't fool yourself. If your children and your youth, like most are, living on devices of some sort, you need to be checking in on them. All right, so I have some fast facts to throw at you guys, really to get behind what this looks like here in Minnesota. I mentioned that Minnesota is a leader in our response against exploitation and trafficking through our Safe Harbor response. Back in 2019, if anyone's ever heard of the Minnesota Student Survey, we were able to sneak in a question to that survey. This is a public health survey. It's full of a wealth of knowledge about what it looks like for our children's experiences. From, is your hygiene okay? Are you eating healthy foods? Do you have supportive people in your life? What have your experiences been like? So in 2019, we asked the question, have you ever exchanged a sexual act for something of value? And on that one given day across the state of Minnesota, we had 5,000 students say yes to that question. This is the first time we've ever asked that question. Now, mind you, they didn't have a PowerPoint presentation to give them definitions about this, right? They were at school, they had a piece of paper, and they had hundreds of questions to answer. Now, what we were able to do from the research that was done on this is really take a deep dive and be able to talk about what our youth experiences in Minnesota are regarding and surrounding moments and experiences of exploitation. So you can see here, we are in the southeast region. We had a response rate at about 1.3%, and I know that that sounds like a small number, but think about those 5,000 students. We shouldn't have any numbers up on this board, right? That's our hope. So if you're a research nerd like me, this was done in partnership with the University of Minnesota, the Minnesota Department of Health, and of course the Minnesota Student Survey. The slide notes here that this is likely an underestimate. We know that when we talk about sexual violence in general, it typically is an underestimate because people don't disclose their sexual violence experiences. When we look at the data more here, we can see how this breaks down. We know that many of our minorities are experiencing exploitation at a greater rate. I remember at the beginning with those two arrows, I said that this is an intersectional issue. It's because we've got a lot going on that might increase those vulnerabilities of the folks who are being affected by this crime. Here, I think it's just important to note the relevant experiences of the youth that said yes to this question. So of those 5,000 students, 12% of them were in a JDC, a correctional institution for minors, when they said yes. Right? We have 8.1% of those 5,000 students that are foster care. I mentioned earlier this risk factor of having prior sexual violence in their life. That's at almost 8% again of those 5,000 students. Unstable housing in the past year is another co-occurring experience of those who have been exploited, or attending words are hard. Attending an alternative learning center, thank you. That is at 5.4% of that 5,000 students that said yes. So understanding that we have a lot of needs for these folks who have these experiences. So, doesn't look like it came up in here, but in Olmsted County, one of the biggest things that we saw from our local data, and this is the biggest gift that this research has given us, we had for the first time research to say that our young boys and our young girls are experiencing this at equal rates. They were 0.2% off of one another. So this isn't just a conversation about young girls. Of course, we see that happening in our victimizations, but it's so much more. If you don't have conversations about healthy relationships and boundaries and consent and in an age-appropriate way with our youth throughout their childhood, then we're missing the mark of almost half of our population, right? And then when we look towards our communities of folks who identify in the LGBTQ plus community, they're highly disproportionately represented in this crime because they don't oftentimes have community to access. So where do they go? Online to meet people, right? And then those people take advantage of them. And so our youth are hungry for community and connection right now. And if we don't give them healthy opportunities to have pro-social opportunities, to be involved in school, to have healthy relationships in all aspects of their life, people online are gonna find them. Now that I've dropped all this heaviness on you, there's hope. Like I mentioned, we have our program and our embedded response here in our 11 county region. And so just a little bit about our work, we do have a 24-hour crisis line. In all honesty, I was actually set to be on call tonight, but because I'm here, I got my shift covered. But we are available all day, every day. For anyone who wants to talk, to ask questions, to seek out help, to know what their rights are as a victim, you can give our line a call. It is also confidential and voluntary, so youth can call without disclosing their name or their age and just say, this might have happened to me and I don't know what to do. So then we can have a healthy and safe person say, you know, have you talked to your mom and dad about that? Or your caregiver? Who's someone trusted in your life that we can turn to and kind of walk through this step by step with one another? I like to say that the biggest job of a sexual assault advocate is just to be a voice for people when they don't feel like they can use theirs. We also offer training, so I'm going to show a couple of opportunities, but whether it's coming out to a school and talking with our youth, if it's coming out to a church community or any sort of group, we're always happy to do training on this topic. We offer consultation for professionals who are out in the field who might come along, clients or people they're working with who have some of these experiences. We offer, like I said, that meat and potatoes of our case management. We have awesome staff on my team that work really diligently with our youth to educate them day in and day out. We also are embedded in the system, right? So we're at Olmsted County, and a big part of my job is making sure that every single person who might encounter someone who has this experience feels like they have the tools and the resources to do their work in that moment. All right, so this is a really wonderful opportunity. This is a monthly caregiver training that I host with a local shelter on Wald. It's out of 180 degrees. One of their staff and myself, we do a virtual caregiver training. It's 2 hours, but it's really an hour and a half. We get out of there pretty quick most times. So if you scan this QR code, it'll actually bring you right to our Eventbrite page. You can register for any of our upcoming trainings. I also included a flyer on the back table alongside a parent caregiver handout just to kind of bring with you in terms of education of what do you do as a parent in this situation? What are your resources? So we really walk through what to look for, how to talk to youth. We have a lot of great videos, like I said, and so please tune in. If you have a community where you would want us to bring this presentation to you, again, reach out and we're more than happy to do it. I think it's better in person than on virtual spaces, but that's what we live in these days, and it's accessible after hours. We also have outreach materials, so this is done by NGH. They recently did a focus group a few years ago where they took the real life stories of victims and survivors and put them into materials so that we can have posters around in our communities to really pull back some of those layers of stigma and stereotype to show what the real experiences are. So the folks on these posters aren't the actual victims or survivors, but the stories are theirs. And then this is my contact information, so I'm going to pass it back to the sheriff for our last speaker.
Thanks, Andrea. So in developing this back before COVID, we talked about the different areas that we wanted to do this in and how could we really bring it to
You guys just needed to finish. I got to get home and get to bed myself, so you can get the rest of it live on their YouTube.